the Honda Indy 200 at Mid-Ohio. Great start, Colton Herner.
Marcus Ericsson and Felix Rosenqvist come together.
3 in a row. Hello, Palou. Alex does it again. Extends his championship lead and wins here at Mid-Ohio.
3 in a row. Let's go.
Welcome back to the DIVEBOMB IndyCar Podcast as we digest the recent running at Mid-Ohio. Whereas ever, I'm joined by Archie and Ellie, and there's nothing mid about Alex Palou at the moment, and the Centro is getting rather repetitive. But another dominant runaway victory to make it 3 in a row. What else is there to say about Alex Palou right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to be just completely in awe of him. He's doing something that is just completely unprecedented, really. 110 points clear in the lead after 9 races. He could have not competed in 2 races and still be leading the championship, which is just obscene, really. I mean, as you said, three wins in a row, 4 out of 5. It could well be 5 out of 5 if it wasn't for the issues during the Indy 500, but he's flawless. He's just driving with this ridiculously incredible precision, and yeah, that's just drawing out this consistency. I think the team deserve the credit as well. They're nailing the strategy, the pit stops, the setup. It's just a collective effort that is it's something special unfolding, really. I mean, the F1 interest that we spoke about last week in Palou, you can see exactly why, because he's just clearly such an incredible talent. It's just staggering the pace that he has consistently, yet still he's able to nurse his car, nurse the tyres, and even when he's off strategy, he can still just make it work while still building these incredible gaps when he gets to the front of the field. It's really special what we're seeing at the moment.
We touched on this a few weeks ago. Can he be caught for the title? We kind of said, it's a bit early on, and even at Road America, he's still got a few rounds coming up he might struggle at, but he pulled it out the bag yet again. We've only just hit halfway through the season. It's going to take a Herculean effort for anyone to get even close to Palou. Even take it to the final race to keep that streak going. It's going to take a near miracle to catch him. And we've never seen this before in recent years. Yeah, Dixon won the first 2 races in 2020 in kind of similar fashion. But for a driver to be this consistent after 9 races, I don't think I've ever seen it in the sport before. A driver looks like they are going to win every single race. And we talk about how unpredictable the series is, and it's incredible to say, but Palou just makes it look predictable at the minute.
Yeah, I mean, he's qualified inside the top 7 for every single race this season. It's now 10 straight top 8s if you go all the way back to Laguna last year. And if you also count that race, then it's 5 wins in the last 10 races as well, which is just completely staggering. Since St. Pete, where he finished 8th, he has been in the top 5 every single race. This is beyond the consistency that we often speak about being needed to win titles. This is, as I said, I'll use the word again, and I think it's pretty apt to describe Palou. It's just unprecedented what he's doing. It is like nothing we ever see, or it's something we very, very rarely see.
Yeah, I think he's just on another level. Like there's no, like you said, there's no way of catching up to him so far. And I hope that it doesn't stay like this exactly. I hope there's more battles, but I really do hope that he can win it as well, because I feel like he deserves it after the races that he's been having so far, and after the season that he's been having. But I hope it's not decided right now, and then it's going to be the same, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think he's just in such a groove, though, that I just can't see anyone stopping him. He's just consistently sort of bringing out these same sort of performances. And let's not forget, IndyCar is it's a spec series pretty much. Obviously, there's bits that the teams can invest in and change, but it's one of the most competitive, if not the most competitive series in the world. The last 17 years, the championship has gone down to the last race. So that just further shows that what Palou is doing is not normal. It is, yeah, it's historic, really, what we are seeing at the moment.
And you look at it, and every single thing he does, he just makes it work. This week, he was on the alternate strategy, but he still just did it perfectly. He still executed it to perfection, and no one even looked close to him. Even when Colton Herta had that issue in the pit lane, which we'll touch on later. He didn't even look like close to catching Palou. I've never seen someone win such a regular basis with such assurance. It's just so remarkable, and it's just even the elites, the Newgarden's, Dixons, they can't even lay a finger on him at the moment, and it's just you can't give him enough credit. You cannot give him enough credit to the way he's driving at the moment.
Yeah, I think one thing I love about him as well is his character. Like, he's still not admitting in interviews that he's dominating. He's just saying, "Oh, we're just maximising the points on the table." But this is domination in its starkest form, really. But I think he's just staying so grounded, and that's helping him. He's not getting carried away with all this success. It's just like tunnel vision at the moment. He's just grinding out this. Like, it doesn't even look like. I think we've spoken about this as well. His car is never on the ragged edge like other drivers. He just seems so in control of it all, it's just beyond impressive.
Yeah, and you look at towards the end of the season, there's still tracks he goes well at. Portland, Laguna, Indianapolis. And you think, how many more can he win this season? And as we said, I think the title is now pretty much a foregone conclusion. As you said, even he could sit out 2 races and still be comfortably ahead in the standings. And it's so unique. We don't see this domination. Even in other series, this domination being impressive, but for it to happen in IndyCar, it's just unbelievable, especially considering how competitive we make the sport out to be. It's just you run out of superlatives for the way he's driving at the minute.
And I think even if Newgarden, say, does go and wipe all the short ovals, win all of those, Palou still only needs mediocre results, and he doesn't really seem to know what a mediocre result is this season. It just seems to be, I think it's out of reach of anyone now with 8 races to go. Yeah. It would take quite something. It would take an implosion from Palou as well, but yeah, I mean, there doesn't seem to be any errors, or it would take like a couple of really unfortunate DNFs, and even then he's still sort of in position to be leading the standings. So yeah. I think it seems a foregone conclusion.
I mean, you look at someone like Newgarden, there's obviously a lot of tracks towards the end of the season that he just go well at, obviously. Most notably the short ovals, but places like IMS as well, obviously. It'd still take an absolute disaster from Palou to get anywhere near that. Anyone near contending him. I mean, the only way you can see it falling apart is some mechanical failure and some crazy accidents in Nashville or something. I mean, the next 4 races, there's tracks Palou isn't too strong at. Toronto, he's only had 1 race there, but he did a right, came 6th last year. Short ovals, not really his forte yet, but it's got to be said, he's been really competitive in the ovals this year as well. And Nashville, and we all know what Nashville is like, so whether he'll win any of the next 4, it's up to, we'll have to wait and see, but he's kind of going through a streak of tracks he's traditionally been good at, but he's wiping the floor. I mean, it doesn't look like anyone's even close to his level. Who to touch on next? Let's go to Colton Herta. Probably was the closest challenger to Palou for the 2nd weekend running, and kind of spoke about Herta's confidence boost last week, but seems to have continued into Mid-Ohio, which obviously the result wasn't how he wanted it, but yeah, again, it is encouraging for someone like Colton Herta.
Yeah, I mean, the pace is there again, back-to-back pole positions. There's another strategist change on his car. He's obviously, evidently been struggling a bit without having his father there, which has been the case for his career so far. The strategy seemed to pay off in qualifying. I'm not entirely sure. I can't remember exactly what they did, but it works out very well for him. He pipped Graham Rahal of all people, which I'm sure we will also come on to. And then in the race, he again seemed, he was holding off Rahal. He seemed in a good position. Whether he could have stopped Palou, that remains to be seen. He probably couldn't have done, but it was a pit lane speed violation that ultimately undid his race and meant it was another, what could have been really, finished 11th, and really he should have been on the podium, you would have said.
Yeah, but I think the crucial thing for Herta is another step forward, and we did speak about it at last week's mid-season review, but he does need this confidence boost, and 2 poles in a row is absolutely no mean feat, and I think the pace in the races is definitely there. Road America arguably should have been his. And Mid-Ohio, maybe he wasn't the strongest on the day, but again, podium was definitely on the cards for him, and I think the results are encouraging. And yet again, a couple of good tracks coming up for him: Toronto, Nashville, Indianapolis. There's definitely some results there. Laguna as well, of course, and there's definitely some good results there for Herta. And I just think it's about confidence for him, and he's starting to pick that back up, which is really good because Colton Herta at his very best is a sensational driver.
Yeah, I think I seem to remember I didn't put Herta as one of the drivers I thought would win a race. I think if we did our mid-season review this week, I think I may revise that. I think he looks in good form and probably one of the most likely to win a race, especially off pace if Palou does have an issue or does have an off weekend. I think Herta looks like one who, it seems like a race win is only a matter of time, really.
Yeah, particularly the tracks coming up. But Palou did us a favour by taking one off our list, albeit it probably wasn't a very hard prediction, I don't think, for Palou.
Yeah, I think at this rate he might tick a few more off our list and end up rendering some of our choices incorrect.
I think it is time to touch on Rahal and Lanigan. Much improved weekend, particularly from Graham Rahal, qualifying the front rows, actually. Looked like he was going to get pole for a while. What a turnaround that would have been. But very encouraging weekend, even for Harvey. Yes, his end result wasn't great, but he did qualify within the Firestone Fast 12 again. Great achievement for him. And yet again, Christian Lundgaard, what an unbelievable season he's having. We said after Road America, still hasn't finished lower than 7th on a road course this year. And finally, things are starting to pick up from Rahal. At the end of the month of May, I don't think their situation could have got any worse, but starting to look back up for them a bit, which is good to see.
Yeah, I mean, for all of the teams' well-documented woes this season, they've had a bit of disarray internally. They've had some reshuffling in the engineering department. Their road course form has been pretty solid. They've got fast cars in qualifying. They've got race pace, clearly. That was shown again at the weekend. But yeah, Graham Rahal is the headline, really. He's been fairly resurgent since the Indy 500, being bumped, obviously ended up racing in the end, but he got into the Fast Six. That alone proved that he's no slouch. And then to qualify on the front row, it was his first Fast Six in 2 years. I think it was his first top 2 qualifying position in 4 years, and all of that only just over a month after all of the terrible Indy 500 that he had, sat on the edge of his car in tears after missing the race. To bounce back and perform as he did this weekend, even though his race ultimately came undone with an issue in the pits, he still finished 7th, so it's not too bad, especially compared to what has been the case for much of the season. But yeah, kudos to Rahal, kudos to Lundgaard, and yeah, as you said, even Harvey looked okay until, I don't know really what happened, dropped off a bit, but it was another Fast 12 for him, so confidence boost, even if he is a bit off his teammates. But yeah, to see Rahal up there with the likes of the Ganassis and the Andrettis, that was really impressive. It was nice to see. It's a nice storyline for Graham.
Yeah, I think he did so well in the race as well, and I think he could have. I think if it wasn't for that pit accident, I think he could have definitely been challenging for a podium. Maybe I think if it carried on, I think after the pit incident, maybe it would have knocked him down a little bit. But I think he still did well though. He didn't finish that bad. But yeah, he did a really good race, and considering all that he went through in the month of May as well, it was really good.
Yeah, I'm hoping it quells some of the talk about, he should be moving to a retirement home and stuff, because he's clearly still got the talent as a driver, and that was shown this weekend. It still remains to be seen what he does next year. I don't think he's guaranteed to stay with the team. But if they can sort of copy this road course form and bring it over to street courses and then the ovals, then, they were really competitive. I think one thing to point out as well is that the top 6 in qualifying were all Hondas, so it was clearly a strong weekend for all of the Honda teams.
So, yeah, it's the first sweep in the Fast 6. I think it was 6 years or something insane like that. They just looked the class of the field today, did Honda, and obviously wanted to finish for Ganassi. Obviously, That was the first Chevy in P3. But yeah, Ray was looking strong. Ganassi's looking strong. Andretti's looking strong. Yeah, pretty good weekend for Honda. Yeah, first sweep by an engine manufacturer since 2016.
Yeah, very impressive. I think actually I'd like to just touch on Lundgaard too. He ended up finishing fourth, and I feel like he had a kind of quiet race. But that was really impressive to just be constantly sort of bringing out these really, really solid results in a team that has been underperforming generally this season, and doing it with little fuss, really. He was just constantly up with the lead pack. He didn't look out of place. So yeah, the entire team deserve a lot of credit for this weekend.
Yeah, and Lundgaard lies 10th in the standings, and we said this before, but his road course form is so incredible, and we'll touch on this more next week, but I don't know why Christian Lundgaard isn't being linked to a better seat the way he's driving at the minute. Yes, his ovals aren't quite sorted yet, but that is partially down to the team he's in. But his road course form, qualifying the race, he's got it all, and he showed that right from his debut in 2021. And wow, I mean, how incredible is he driving at the minute, I think? I touched this last week, but yeah, won the drivers of the season.
Yeah, for sure. I think you're right about the seeming lack of interest in him. A lot of the talk's been about the likes of Callum Ilott, maybe David Malukas. There's been not much on Lundgaard. I think he still have a year on his contract with RLL, maybe?
Might do. But everyone's got buyout clauses, and everyone's got clauses in their contract. So, yeah. Touch this more next week, as I said, but the fact he isn't being spoken about for the likes of Ganassi or even Andretti, I think, is really bizarre, because one of the drivers of the season so far for me, I'll put him obviously below Palou, but kind of in that bracket beneath him, has been so good this season. I think definitely becoming a bit underrated in the IndyCar world for me.
Yeah, for sure. I think I don't feel like I see enough people sort of praising him for these really impressive results. He kind of just goes about it quietly, a bit unassuming. Yeah, I agree with you. Underrated for sure.
I don't see much about him either, and it's like really surprising because he's doing really well, and he improved since his qualifying as well. It was only like one place, but he's still improved since qualifying, and I feel like he's got like a lot to give. I feel like what he's already done is not just being like praised enough.
Absolutely agree. And I think another similar driver to Christian Lundgaard, again, very impressive day, David Malukas. We touched on him not having the greatest start to the season, but a real pickup in form in Mid-Ohio for him, and ended up sixth. Very, very impressive result. One of his best on a road course, if not, might actually be his best on a road course. His best result on a road course for Malukas. So, impressive result for him as well.
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, I think Mid-Ohio last year might have been his first top 10.
Yep.
So he's got form for this. There was some interesting quotes emerged, actually. I think it was from the Indy Star, maybe, saying that Malukas had claimed that the chemistry in the team isn't quite what he'd wanted. And again, we'll touch on this when we delve into the driver market a bit more, but he's claiming, he wants to move to a bigger team. He feels like it's about time. It's not been the happiest time at Coyne this season. They've not quite got it right enough. Obviously, Texas was impressive with the fourth place, but yeah, this weekend off the back of this seeming not discontent, but maybe Malukas is a bit more ambitious than the team's results or what they've had on offer for him this season. Have been. He got into the Fast 12. He transferred in qualifying, which was impressive, and then really held his own in the race. And to come home sixth, that was really impressive. It was a great performance from him.
And I think it's only fair to touch on his teammate as well, Stingray Robb. I'd say probably his best weekend so far. Looked really racy. Obviously towards the lower end of the field, but looked a lot more racy, looked a lot more comfortable in Mid-Ohio, and a strong weekend for Coyne all around, really.
Yeah, for Rob, barring Armstrong, he was the standout rookie. He was faster than Canapino, and we know the credit Canapino's been getting this season. He was faster than Benjamin Pedersen, and we will definitely come on to speaking about him because he didn't make too many people happy. He was faster than Ferrucci. It was a strong weekend for Coyne. I think Malukas had 4 DNFs heading into Mid-Ohio. That's something that is quite noteworthy, really, to bounce back from that and not only just finish the race, but to finish sixth. yeah, fair play to him. He was constantly running inside the top 10. And just to see Rob making those improvements as well, it was a much better weekend, and it will have raised spirits at Coyne.
So much to touch on this week, really. I mean, rest of the we touched on the rest of the podium. Scott Dixon and Will Power come the veterans. It was a very veteran performance, wasn't it? To get the job done. Others had their issues, but in very Scott Dixon and Will Power fashion, they just got the job done.
Yeah, I mean, I've barely got any notes on Scott Dixon because he just had a very quiet race, but it was a very Scott Dixon performance. The strategy from Ganassi overall was just perfection, really, on all sides. But yeah, Dixon was kind of there or thereabouts all weekend, solid qualifying, and then beyond solid in the race, really, to pick up a podium. And he was only 5 seconds behind Palou in the end. He actually started to claw that gap back a little bit, it seemed. So elevated him to second in the championship as well, Dixon. So, yeah, good weekend for him. And then Will Power, likewise, really. I mean, Penske just don't seem to really have it in qualifying. Power still, even being, like, statistically the most successful qualifier in IndyCar, he still hasn't made a Fast Six. He was the leading Penske, but still didn't make the Fast Six this weekend. They seem to be there or thereabouts in terms of pace in races, but because of other teams having the edge in qualifying, they can't quite seem to make their way to the very front to challenge Palou. But yeah, it was a really solid run from Power to finish third.
Yeah, and even McLaughlin as well, pretty strong weekend coming home in P5. Obviously, I touched on him last week, not being really the level I expected him to, but yeah, pretty solid weekend from McLaughlin as well. And interestingly enough, Newgarden was the weakest Penske this weekend, and definitely a step up. Obviously, we've touched on how sort of off the pace Penske being at times of the season, but yeah, a bit of an upturn in form for them this week.
Yeah, I think especially for, as you mentioned, McLaughlin, obviously he'd had a sort of quiet few races, not a terrible few races, but he wasn't featuring near the front, and you definitely felt he was more competitive this weekend. He was only a couple of seconds behind Power, I think, so they were pretty much on par. But yeah, as you mentioned with Newgarden, it was quite a contrast to Road America, really, where he was, elbows out. He was very fast, aggressive, holding his own to take second. He was just not really a feature, was he? He ended up 12th, which is, being the guy that we tipped to possibly be the biggest challenger for Palou. That's not really the sort of result you need.
Second place in the championship is getting actually quite tight. You kind of wish it was a championship battle, because Dixon, Newgarden, Ericsson, O'Ward kind of in this little group together, and we haven't touched on O'Ward and Ericsson. Both had pretty crazy weekends. I think we'll start off with Ericsson. Qualified all right, and huge accident with Felix Rosenqvist, and credit to the aero screen yet again. So we don't know what consequence there would have been without it, but it was clear that it had its desired effect. You saw the tyre mark on Rosenqvist's aero screen, and really effective use of the aero screen there, and really shows why it has been implemented and what could have been quite a scary accident.
Yeah, I think initially it seemed quite innocuous. It didn't seem the fastest, incident, but there was the tyre mark left on one of the tear-offs was pretty scary, and the aero screen, really did its job. The left front tyre of Ericsson, as he made contact with Rosenqvist, touched the aero screen, and the floor scraped across it as well. It was a rare error from Ericsson, really. You don't see him making, many misjudgments like that, but Rosenqvist left him plenty of space, and Ericsson just, he went in incredibly deep and ultimately ended his own race, at least meaningful running, and Rosenqvist was left a lap down, and once again it was a story of bad luck for Felix, as it quite often has been, which is unfortunate because I actually feel he's had a fairly strong season. He's been competitive enough with his teammates, but yeah, it was really unfortunate for him because it was not his fault, and from Ericsson's part it was a miscalculation that was quite costly for him and his countryman.
Yeah, I mean, probably got to be said, it was quite clumsy from Ericsson. Rosenqvist left him plenty of space on the inside and basically ran him out of room and initiated contact. And it's kind of a rare mistake, as you said, for Ericsson. We don't really see him retiring much or having really any accidents. He usually goes around his business quite quietly, but first finish outside the top 10 of the season, so dropped down the standings a bit. But yeah, it's an interesting one. But as I said, got to be grateful for the aero screen. What a job it did there for Felix Rosenqvist.
Did Marcus manage to rejoin? I know that he tried to, but I don't know if he did.
No.
Yeah.
So they tried to. Then they issued him a penalty, I think, but obviously
Yeah.
never served it.
Yeah, actually, yeah. I think he came back out, and then they went back to the garage to assess the, whether the repairs had worked, whatever. But yeah, I'll touch on that penalty. You got a 45-second stop and go penalty, which I don't understand, and maybe it's a bit of a joke. And why don't they just maybe drop him a few positions for the start of the next race? Because that's a punishment. A 45-second stop go penalty when you have ruined someone's race and your race is ruined. That could be thought of as the penalty, but you're like 40 laps down. What's a 45-second stop and go penalty going to do? I think if you're going to punish him, it maybe needs to be something for the next race. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's not really punishment if it doesn't really have an effect on you.
It's pretty pointless at that point.
Bit of a trend of very odd decision making this year from the IndyCar stewards. Yeah, strange one for me. But yeah, you really think next race you should be looking at something like penalising. I mean, obviously he had the consequence of him ruining his own race, but he ruined someone else's race, and you've got to look at should he get a penalty for that long term. And I think an accident like that he's fully to blame for. So giving him a 45-second penalty when you're at the race is pretty pointless.
Yeah, I think it's a good point you make about he got penalised by having his race ended, but Rosenqvist had the same penalty and he was an innocent party, but his race wasn't ended, but his meaningful running was ended, having gone a lap down.
I think it's time to touch on Mr. Pato O'Ward. Bit of a topsy-turvy weekend. Obviously, he made his own mistake in qualifying. Again, sort of a rare Pato O'Ward area. You don't really see him making these mistakes by himself. Took an aggressive strategy in the race, went for the free stop and recovered from the last row to 8th in the race, and he was less than a second off P6 in the end. So it's actually a pretty strong performance from O'Ward, all things considered. Obviously, the Saturday shenanigans kind of prevented him from doing that, but his pace all round was pretty good this weekend.
Yeah, I think it really speaks to his pace that he did manage to execute the 3-stop, which was unfancied. People were saying, he might end up around sort of between 10th, 15th, but to recover inside the top 10 ahead of some accomplished drivers, the likes of Newgarden, and obviously even Alexander Rossi is his lead teammate. I think that just speaks to his pace. And I mean, you look even in, I think by lap 17, he was challenging Newgarden anyway before he came into the pits for the first time. Impressive pace. It was an excellent recovery drive. He was showing, a nice balance of measure and aggression. It was really good racecraft, I think.
Yeah, and it's kind of second week in a row we've kind of seen a more composed O'Ward. He didn't really go for any risky moves. He seemed fairly calm. He was patient about his overtakes, and at the end of the day, that style paid dividends.
Yeah, he did amazing as well, because I was listening to the commentators and I think they were doubting the free stopper, and then he just managed to do it and he managed to pull it off really well. I think surprising a lot of people, because he's a really good driver. He's got lots of talent, but I think it was just against what everyone was saying. So pulling that off once again just speaks to the skills and the talent that he's got as well.
Yeah, I mean his moves were composed. He was making some great moves as well into turn 4, and I find it a bit of a shame he had that accident in qualifying, because you never quite know, because his pace across the weekend was actually pretty strong through the practice sessions, and you never know, maybe he could have been the guy to challenge Alex Palou over the weekend, because his race pace, albeit he was a different strategy, was pretty strong.
Yeah, and you mentioned he was sort of in touching distance of 6th. Maybe he could have finished higher up if it wasn't for Benjamin Pedersen, who it's probably about time to touch on, because he impacted O'Ward's race for a period. He was one of the drivers that was stuck behind Pedersen, who was at the back of the lead lap. I think the first incident with him was with Palou, when there's maybe a bit more right to be defending. You're trying to legitimately stay on the lead lap, but throughout the race, he was holding up more drivers, and the reality is, if a caution had come out, he'd be put behind them all anyway. So it was pretty pointless, really. It was just, I didn't agree with it, and neither did the drivers, really. Obviously, there's no blue flag system. He doesn't have to get out of the way, but there's etiquette, and he didn't show very good etiquette, and he's not going to make any friends. I think David Malukas said he'd made an enemy, and Malukas, it takes a lot to be an enemy with David Malukas, let's just put it that way. But Scott McLaughlin was was remonstrating with him after the race. There was a video on Twitter, wasn't there? And he said he knows what I'm going to do if they get in a situation where somehow the roles were to be reversed in the future. And it wasn't great, really.
Yeah, even the Palou one, you can kind of understand him wants to keep his lead lap, but there was not huge benefit to him. You can understand if he's got a teammate fighting near the front, but obviously Santino Ferrucci was nowhere near the front. And even when Palou was trying to get past him, he was still getting pretty aggressive. And it wasn't needed. He didn't need to get aggressive. Palou was always going to be faster than him. And he kind of got his elbows out against the race leader. And, if it goes wrong, that's just a horrible look on you.
No, I just think he should have let Palou past. Well, maybe not Palou, but let everyone else after Palou. He should have definitely, I'm not saying he had to slow down to let them by, but he should have definitely made it easier for them just to, move past him. And I think it impacted Pato's race as well, because I think he could have possibly caught up to Graham Rahal and maybe got 7th as well, or even higher, but I don't know. Didn't he have 20 seconds left of the push thing? I don't know about
push
that.
To pass.
Yeah, the push to pass, and he had to waste it on someone on a lapped car. It's just, and Arrow McLaren didn't agree. They tried to get help from Chevy as well, but he just still wasn't cooperating, and I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know the solution. I think Will Power said in the press conference that blue flags are one thing, but also possibly just seeing if there's a way to disable push to pass if it's a car that people are coming up to lap. The car that is being lapped could have push to pass disabled. That's one solution if you aren't to introduce blue flags. The only consolation is it actually caused some quite close racing towards the end, because there was just a massive train behind Pedersen, and there was a bit of contact between Grosjean and Di Francesco teammates, and there's some quite close battling in the end. But on the whole,
Andretti's love crashing into each other here, because if you remember last year, pretty much every single combination of driver collided last year here.
No, that's the first thing I thought of when I saw that wheel banging. But I understand why the drivers aren't particularly happy with Pedersen. He's not done anything to sort of, break the written rules, but I think there's some unwritten rules, really, gentlemen's agreements, as you may say. But
look, Ben Pedersen's had a quiet season. I think when you're having a quiet season, kind of look at like the Canapino, for example. When you're having a quiet season, the thing you don't want to do is go around upsetting people, because if you upset people, team owners aren't going to want you in your team long term. And if your seat is at risk, or drivers are going to race you, that respect is gone. And I think for someone who's in their rookie year, the last thing you want to be doing is causing problems with the leaders.
But then again, because he's a rookie, couldn't you just say it was part of the inexperience? You could just say that he's going to learn from it. But
I mean, you could say that, but I think even after the Palou incident, it was pretty clear that he overstepped the mark. And he's already had 8 races, and with all respect to Benjamin Pedersen, he's not a driver who competes at the front. He's a driver who does get lapped. And I think you can't be doing that. You can't be doing that at the level he's at and the stage he's at. Podcast favourite back this week, Conor Daly. He wasn't gone for long. I think before we touch on him, the monster crash which caused him to go in that seat for Simon Pagenaud on Saturday. Huge crash, flipped 6.5 times in a really terrifying accident. It was great to see him walk away. by his own steam. But wow, scary accident for Pagano. And what a relief to see him walk away. 2 massive accidents this weekend, and thankfully no one was harmed.
Yeah, I mean, I was having issues trying to get the stream up for second practice. So when I finally got it up, and the first thing I saw was Pagano's car sideways against the barriers. Little did I know that he had barrel rolled 6.5 times to get there after brake failure at about 180 miles per hour. It was one of the scariest crashes I've seen, really, and especially a single car accident to go off at that speed with that sort of, I think it was an 80-something G impact, and ultimately that's why he was unable to qualify, and then after being assessed the next day, unable to race. Thankfully, he was fine. Again, credit to the safety mechanisms, IndyCar, Dallara, the AMR safety crew for their swift response again. But yeah, Pagano, because of the size of the incident, wasn't able to race. He's fine, and that's great to know. Yeah, it was a scary accident, and the fact that I think it was obviously the brake failure, but it was enhanced by the fact there's a bit of a drop off between the track and the grass by the side of the track, and that made, as you see his car going off the track, he's already airborne before he starts barrel rolling across the gravel. And actually, there is an argument to suggest that the barrel rolls could actually have made it a safer accident because it scrubbed speed off, and if he'd gone straight into the tyre barrier, you don't know what could have happened, because we obviously saw the Rosenqvist one a few years ago, and he got his throttle stuck and he almost ended up through the tyre barrier, and it was obviously similar speeds.
Yeah, huge relief. But you kind of saw, I mean, I watched the slow-mo replay first and you think, whoa, that's a scary one. And then you kind of see it in live imaging. And it's just, wow, the speed he's going at, even towards the barrier when he's barrel rolling, is absolutely terrifying. I don't think I've seen an individual crash of that magnitude in years.
Yeah, I saw it the same as Dan as well. I saw the slow-mo and I was like, oh my god, that's so bad. And then I saw like it in normal time, and it was just even worse. But it's such a relief that he's okay, and it kind of like speaks to the safety, like the stuff that they have in the cars to make them safe.
Yeah, and it was great to see Pagano was okay, but it was also great to see Conor Daly back in the field. I mean, we were never expecting miracles. It was a one-off replacement, and the race was his. Well, okay, he had a warm-up, and then the race was his only competitive session. He finished 20th in the end, which, to be honest, is reasonably respectable. Only one place behind the person who replaced him, Ryan Hunter-Reay.
I mean, the story behind it is incredible as well, because I listened to Daly's podcast last week, and he was intending to come to the race, but he was only going to be there as a fan, and he said he was going to go on Friday, and he didn't even have anywhere to stay. He was maybe going to stay on the floor of some driver's bus or something. So stayed over to Saturday. I think he intended to go before race day. Obviously, it's quite difficult for him being there and having lost his seat. It must be not the nicest feeling. But as soon as the Pagano crash happened, images came out on Twitter of Daly, looking at the steering wheel of the Shank car, and then he was in team meetings that evening. He didn't take part in qualifying because obviously there was still hope that Pagano would be okay to race, but as soon as it transpired that wasn't the case, his mum drove his race overalls up from Indianapolis, which is a cracking story in itself. Yeah, and it was a big opportunity for Daly in different machinery. It was obviously tough circumstances. It was a Honda car. He's been driving Chevys at Ed Carpenter Racing, starting at the back of the grid as well. It's always going to be hard to particularly prove yourself, but he did an excellent job. Even you look at warm-up, he was within the same 10th as Castro Neves. I think he finished just on the edge of the top 10, maybe just outside the top 10, and then first half of the race was tricky. He was running right at the back of the lead lap, back of the pack, back of the pack in terms of the drivers on the lead lap, but he really got into a groove after the first stint was over, really, and even past Castro Neves in the final stint towards the latter stage of the race, which is impressive given Castro Neves, he's accustomed to that team, that car. And yeah, as you said, he was right on the back of Ryan Hunter-Reay by the end, which it's proof, isn't it, that put him in different machinery, he will prove to you that he wasn't the problem at the team.
Absolutely. And, Ryan Hunter-Ray, the benefits haven't been reaped so far for him. And obviously it's a long-term project, but, you look back on it and see how Daly performed. I'm not going to go out and say Conor Daly's one of the best drivers in the field because, to be honest, he isn't. But Ryan Hunter-Ray, you think, what's the benefit? And things haven't changed. All this guidance we've set up and etc. But it hasn't reaped the rewards so far. And even if he's on a race by race basis, which was suggested, kind of looks like at the end of the season now. But why did they make that decision? We touched on this pretty extensively, so we won't do it too much this week. But it's just a shame, really. To see Conor Daly step in and be on the same pace as the guy who replaced him.
Yeah, I think the word I often use to describe Daly is dependable, and I think he proved that again.
Yeah, and he finished like less than a second behind Ryan Hunter-Ray, I think. Or like somewhere within there. So
Pretty impressive. Talking of impressive, this is a completely side note from weekend, but an interesting stat must be said. Andretti Autosport have taken pole for 5 of the 7 road courses this year, which is pretty impressive. For a team who struggled so much last year, and even this year at times, I mean, they really dominated qualifying, and it's really sort of unexpected, really.
Yeah, Kirkwood was up there as well, wasn't he? He qualified third, so with her to pole, Kirkwood third, it was really strong. I think Kirkwood had a race where he finally didn't lose a load of positions right at the start. But then he had that. Yeah, I think it was when Palou was passing him. It was quite a hard incident to unpick, wasn't it? But he spun. He didn't lose loads of places. He dropped down to 10th, but actually from there he kind of just kept regressing a bit in the race. He ended up 17th, which really, when you look at it, Andretti have been. It was a story of Andretti's season in many regards. That they had a really strong qualifying, and then none of their drivers even finished inside the top 10, with Herter 11th and then Kirkwood 17th. It was, but as you say, qualifying pace is there. They just need to execute it in the races.
I mean, on top of that, Chevy haven't taken a single pole in a road or street course this year as well.
I mean, that aligns with the likes of Penske struggling for pace, Power not managing to get into a Fast 6 yet this season.
Yeah, I mean, it's not surprising McLaren maybe even been up there. Obviously, Rosenqvist got pole in Texas, but yeah, really a remarkable feat by Honda. And even at the end of the races, they're still dominating, obviously. So yeah, McLaughlin's the only Chevy winner on a road course this year, obviously in Alabama. So really, Honda have kind of had the upper edge of the season so far. Obviously, Chevy have been on top of the ovals, but Honda really, really been strong on the road courses.
At the end of the day, the ovals make up the shorter portion of the season too. So
yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see Chevy win every single oval this year, especially when you look at with O'Ward and Newgarden, their lineup when it comes to the short ovals, Power as well. But yeah, really, really remarkable. Really quite surprising, to be honest, so far. So running order: Palou, Dixon, Power. 4th was Lingard, 5th was McLaughlin. 6th place, a very impressive day for Malukas, ahead of Graham Rahal and Pato O'Ward. Marcus Armstrong actually had fairly quite a day, but ended up a fairly impressive 9th.
Yeah, that was further evidence, really, of his racecraft. Really, he's already up there and competitive, isn't he? And he's not got a seat secure so far for next year, but I think Ganassi will be doing a lot to keep hold of him, given the promise he's already shown.
Yeah, he did really well as well, because he qualified like 18th, I think. So he made up like half the places, and it already shows that he's like so far the best rookie that there is this season. I don't know if that will continue to stay the way, but yeah, he's been performing really well.
10th place, Alexander Rossi. Pretty quiet day from him. Don't think it's too much to talk about on his end. 11th place, Colton Herter. Obviously, that bit speed penalty. Joseph Newgarden ended up 12th. Kind of a really underwhelming day for Newgarden, to be honest.
He had that slight touch with Di Francesco, I think.
13th, continued struggles of Roman Grosjean.
Yeah, it wasn't great. I think he was just lacking pace all weekend again, and this is a thing, I think we mentioned it a bit last season when I was talking about him being my disappointment after having such a strong start to the season. He just didn't have the pace even in qualifying. He failed to transfer while Herter, Kirkwood managed to get through in the same group as well. So, yeah, and then it was another underwhelming race. He didn't make the same sort of errors, but it still wasn't strong. And it was quite a funny moment in first practice where they were showing his incidents at Road America, just dissecting that a bit. And in the bottom corner, as where they have the live coverage, he went off track then, which was a bit poetic.
Sums up his season, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does really.
I mean, yeah, still hasn't got a top 10 since his podium in Alabama, which is crazy stuff. Dropping kind of further down the standings at this rate. 14th, teammate Devlin Di Francesco. Yeah, actually had a fairly decent weekend of Di Francesco.
Yeah, it was solid. I think he had a solid weekend at Road America as well, and then he just randomly ended up finishing in the 20s somehow, and he was again running in a similar position at Mid-Ohio. He was around Grosjean for most of the race. He wasn't particularly off the pace. Not sure he'll return to Andretti next season, but it wasn't an awful weekend.
He's definitely improving, I think, particularly compared to last year. Obviously, he's still not the level you'd expect him to be, but he's becoming more comfortable, must be said. 15th, Renus VK. Again, another fairly quiet one for him.
I think
16th.
I think he had like a little bit of contact with Kyle Kirkwood, but it was only like a slight bit. But other than that, it was very quiet.
Yeah, was that in the chaotic last? It was this sort of section with the order, wasn't it? Where there was the chaos when they were stuck behind Pedersen and.
Yeah, it was Newgarden and Di Francesco, and then after that it was Di Francesco and Grosjean, and then VK nearly went through, and then something to do with Kirkwood and VK. So it was all within like 5 minutes of each other.
Yeah, crazy Pedersen incidents. 16th, another quiet one. Callum Ilott. Really see too much of him this weekend. 17th, Kyle Kirkwood. Again, kind of drops off the order quite dramatically after his spin. 18th was Jack Harvey. 19th was Ryan Hunter-Reay ahead of Conor Daly, who was ahead of his teammate Helio Castroneves. Stingray Rob was 22nd ahead of Agustin Canapino. Again, quite got a weekend for Canapino, actually. It's maybe one of his less strong weekends in the series so far. Followed by Ferrucci, Rosenqvist, and Pedersen, with Ericsson, the only non-finisher. So, not too much news going on, but there was one small hint we were given. It's a bit off topic, but I think it's definitely worth touching on anyway. We love drivers going to different series. If Palou does go to F1, that's going to be particularly exciting. But the Trackhouse 91 project in NASCAR, so for those you don't know, they kind of give drivers like special one-off entries. They've done Kimi Räikkönen as an example. Trackhouse 91 kind of pick a random international driver to compete in some races. And Shane Van Gisbergen, who, by the way, I know we're an IndyCar podcast, but what a performance from Shane Van Gisbergen in Chicago to win this NASCAR debut. Incredible. Almost as impressive as Alex Palou at the minute.
I mean, it has IndyCar links with Scott McLaughlin also similar coming over from supercars. It shows the breadth of talent over there, doesn't it?
I mean, the two of them had actually quite a rivalry towards the late 2010s, the McLaughlin and Van Gisbergen. It's quite a fun couple of clips of them, and McLaughlin proved it, and Van Gisbergen's proven it as well. Maybe Australian supercars is a series of people need to look out for. Come these regional series. I kind of think like something like Super Formula as well. These series are underrepresented. You could even say the same for IndyCar. Obviously, that's slightly evolving a bit more, but there's so many racing drivers around the world who are so underappreciated. I think maybe that's why we need to see an IndyCar driver in F1 soon.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, was it Joey Logano said that Van Gisbergen made them all look rubbish or something? Yeah, the burger, the hamburger guy.
But yeah, Shane Van Gisbergen winning on debut in NASCAR, absolutely incredible. But he hinted over the weekend before his remarkable victory that an IndyCar driver is going to be next in that project on an oval. There's obviously been loads of speculation about who it can be. Who do we think it will be, and who do we want it to be?
For me, well, I want it to be Scott McLaughlin because obviously he's got experience in the stock car ranks, and I'd be really interested at some point to see him do a cup race. Who do I think it will be? I think it will be Helio Castroneves. That seems to be the consensus from people in reaction to this, and yeah, I think it makes sense.
I have no idea because I don't watch that series. So
Neither do I. Don't worry. Boring. I'd love to see Pato O'Ward on NASCAR. You know, his oval racing is already a mega oval racer as O'Ward, and kind of his aggressive but fair style is kind of perfectly suited for NASCAR. And I think he'd be quite funny. He's got a mate in NASCAR, Danny Suarez. You know, that will link up would be quite cool to see him on an oval. But I think the one that makes sense is definitely Castroneves. Don't know if you were aware of this, but there were huge rumours of him being linked to the Daytona 500. I can't remember how it panned out, but for a while it looked like he was definitely going to do it. I think, you know, he's coming to the end of his career, but he's now got that legacy where it doesn't really matter what he does outside of IndyCar now. Definitely makes sense, but you know what? It's going to be fun, especially if Helio's in the car.
Yeah, that'll definitely be one to watch.
DIVEBOMB IndyCar Podcast is basically a Conor Daly propaganda show at this current rate. So if you're interested, Conor Daly is back at Mid-Ohio next week, racing in the NASCAR Truck Series. Obviously, we don't really know much about NASCAR, particularly the Truck Series. I don't know who's going to race, but one thing I find really interesting about NASCAR is that the Cup Series drivers do the truck races, which is I find really random. One, because how do they have time? And two, it's just like a driver taking a massive step down. Like, imagine Max Verstappen just rocking up to a Spanish F4 race, or Joseph Newgarden just deciding to hop into a US F2000 for a weekend. It's just so random, but it's honestly, I think that'd be cool.
I mean, it'd be cool. It's weird. I don't obviously NASCAR's a bit inaccessible over in the UK. I don't really understand it. I don't know whether it's the same in terms of being a junior series or whether it is more like a. I don't know. I don't really know what comparison to use, but whether it is more just for maybe drivers who aren't as good, to put it bluntly, as the actual Cup Series drivers. I know the Xfinity Series does have some of the younger drivers. Yeah, I'm not particularly well versed, but it is quite accurate saying, oh, it's like Newgarden dropping down to, I don't know, a USF Pro 2000 or a USF 2000 race, or Verstappen dropping down to do F3 or something. But yeah, Daly's had a couple of appearances for in the actual NASCAR Cup Series. He qualified for the Daytona 500. He raced at COTA as well, but wasn't particularly competitive. I think he had some issues with his car on both of those occasions. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. It's nice to see him racing somewhere else. He obviously did the Nitro Cross as well. Hopefully it just keeps him in the racing groove, and you never know. Maybe he'll get a seat next year if they can sort something out. I would really like to see him back in IndyCar.
Conor Daly's a driver who kind of just suits the NASCAR mold. I really don't know how to put it, but he just feels like a driver who suits NASCAR.
He looks like a NASCAR driver.
Especially when he had that mullet era, I think.
Yes, absolutely.
That's prime NASCAR, you know, very hardcore American, you know.
Yeah, I agree.
Referring to Van Gisbergen as a hamburger, just so American.
Yeah.
You can't get more American than that. You know, Ferrucci's done NASCAR races. I'm fairly sure as well, you know.
Yeah, I think he's done some Xfinity races, maybe.
I'll have a look. Ferrucci has done. Yeah, so he's done like 10 Xfinity races. So, common trend maybe. You know, we should. What other Americans are likely to do it? I can't see Newgarden doing it. I can see Herta doing a one-off. Maybe.
Yeah,
Rahal.
It'd be interesting to see some of the, because obviously they have the Penske driver, the Penske links to NASCAR. You never know. I could definitely see McLaughlin.
Coin as
doing a
well.
race.
Have NASCAR links.
Yes, actually, because there's a car that sometimes has the Biohaven sponsors that Rob usually sport.
What was when Grosjean ran the purple car? They've got a similar one there. Cody Ware did a couple of one-offs in IndyCar a few years ago. There's NASCAR with DCR.
There's a Napa livery as well, I think.
Yes,
sometimes.
there is.
Chase Elliott, I think.
Yeah, we haven't actually seen a Napa livery in ages now. It's
No, we
become
haven't.
an alternation, hasn't it? So Rossi had the split one last year, didn't he? We had it half alternation, half Napa.
Yeah.
Which was bold, but yeah, they're quite nice. I mean, liveries are always fun. You know, liveries changing around quite a bit this year, as well as got to be said. I mean, some drivers change at every race, but Lundgaard's, good. I rate Lundgaard's livery.
It's bright.
Bold. It's out there.
I feel like DeFrancesco's one that switches his livery up very frequently.
So does Grosjean, actually. He kind of rotates between the DHL one and the Biohaven one, or whatever it is.
No, it's not Biohaven.
Delaware Live?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, he changed.
Jack Harvey too. Jack Harvey's another one who seems to have a whole load of different liveries.
It's quite fun though. It's absolutely quite very, very fun. I do love a good livery change. Although when you kind of don't look at the spotter's guide and you see a practice session and you hang on, who's this? Takes you a while sometimes. Especially
so all the Auto Nation cars are the most difficult.
Oh, nightmare! There's 3 of them.
I know.
Spice it up a bit. That's why I need the Napa Auto Parts back. That livery, iconic. So there we are, the Mid-Ohio race review. Again, another off week next week. But don't worry, of course we'll be back. We're going to have driver market, sort of driver transfer predictions for next season. The driver market obviously ramping up a little bit at this moment in time. So we're going to be looking at some sort of predictions, sort of analysis, who can go where through next season. Week after that, we'll be on the streets of Toronto for the award round. And we'll see you that week. Hope you enjoyed the episode, and we'll see you next week.